So over the past several years, collaboration has become a buzzword within businesses. And I have a theory as to why this is. I think that collaboration has become such a buzzword because work is getting more and more complex. Projects are getting more complex. And suddenly we're starting to realize that we can't design a perfect business process to actually execute the work that we want to do. Right? We can't perfectly foresee what's going to happen in the future. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so what we need is to have the ability to improvise in our jobs. We need people to have the ability to improvise, to go out and find an expert to contribute to their problem, and be able to search the entire company to do so. And so one of the ways that people have tried to create collaboration, one of the structures that's supposedly facilitating this is communities of practice. And so communities of practice are a way that you can pull together professionals within an organization around a certain topic of knowledge so that they can interact about something that they're passionate about, that they practice, and that they can try and make better as professionals. But what ends up happening is that when we talk about collaboration and when we talk about communities of practice, we don't really have specific ideas of what that means. Think about that for a second. When you say collaboration, what kind of collaboration? What is it intended to achieve? And a lot of times what we end up is figures like this. Collaboration within a community of practice is a bunch of blue men who have evidently just murdered a puzzle, right? So don't Google it because it's not useful. And what we really need is a better understanding of the types of collaboration that are going on within these communities of practice. And so what we did is we went out and we asked people, who do you share knowledge with? What type of knowledge do you share and why? And what we came up with is really interesting, but not that surprising. The type of collaboration that people engage with one another has to do entirely with how much knowledge they have in common. And so we created this 4-tier structure where we have certain people that know almost the same thing. So they have these highly overlapping connections. That means that they don't have to explain their background to each other like two mechanical engineers. And so as a result, they can really quickly sit down, understand problems that they're trying to address, and problem solve together. Now, not all collaboration is like this. In fact, there are some people that have very different knowledge bases, like a mechanical engineer and a finance person, but they still need to collaborate to make a project happen. Now, when this happens, we call this a complementary overlap, because they work together on a mutual task, and most of what they're doing is task coordination. Now, all of you know what it's like to start a new job and to not know anything. And so there's another type of collaboration that tends to happen in these communities of practice, which is that young people get educated in the trade. So when a new mechanical engineer gets in contact with an old mechanical engineer and can learn from him, we get these growth connections, which are mostly focused on education. And then finally, what we saw is quite a few connections where people have been brought together and then they get into a room and stare blankly at each other because, quite frankly, they don't have enough common knowledge to meaningfully collaborate. And that's when we get these non-overlapping connections. Now, the result of all of this has big impacts on communities of practice. And this is the key that I want you to walk away with, is that within a community of practice, if you're trying to facilitate collaboration, you need to first understand what type of collaboration you're trying to facilitate, and then you need to create a scope that fits that. Let me give you an example. I studied one community of practice that was focused on Six Sigma and process improvement. It's a very narrow boundary, and what we usually do is we start out and we say, what's that commonality? Six Sigma. We want people to share about Six Sigma. What's more important is to say we have this group of people, and what we want them to be able to do is problem solve together. And so as a result, we should have a narrow definition so we can have the largest number of overlapping connections possible. Now, in contrast to this, we also studied the transportation community of practice. And they said transportation, we have this in common, transportation projects. Now, the problem is that this involves things like ports, where ships go, and airports, where no ships go. And so you have all of these people that have non-overlapping connections because you've drawn a scope around a fake commonality. And what you first should have asked is, what do we want people to actually coordinate about? And then we can draw the boundary of the community of practice to meet that function. If you have more questions or comments about this research, we encourage you to visit our website by scanning this QR code. Thank you.